I have another question I want to ask you before we go. It's you were still the hairdresser for John, Paul, George, and Ringo when John did the movie How I Won the War. Did you cut his hair short?
No, that was just before me. No, I tell you exactly. No, I didn't cut his hair short because he had cut his hair short for the film because he
Right.
was in the army. But the extension, what happened was that when I was cutting Paul's hair at his house one day, I happened to say to him, I haven't seen Jane Asher around for a while. He said, no, she's touring. And I
Uh-huh.
said, now you're not working, basically, or writing, he's just writing. Were you going to go down to the studio and see her? And he said, no, I can't do that because all they're going to do is ask when the Beatles are going to get back together again, or when they're going to, or tour, or what you're doing. So no, and I just was doing his hair. It was wet at the time.
Hmm.
I said, oh, that's a shame. I said, well, once you finished filming, I suppose you go on vacation with her. No, we've got the same problem. And as I'm doing it, I just said to him, what a shame. He said, yeah. I said, well, why don't you go in disguise? And he said, like what? And I had his hair in my hand. And I said, why don't I cut all your hair off? And I said it with a slight little wry smile. And he looked at me in the mirror and said, go on then, do it. So I cut Paul McCartney's hair a quarter of an inch all over. No one ever knew what I did. That was a story I could have told.
What
But
year
that
was
I
that?
wanted. Sorry?
What year was that? Do you remember?
That was in 1967.
Okay, I'm going to look for
Okay.
those pictures.
Yeah. It's in the book. There's pictures on my website.
Oh, very
And
okay.
my biggest fear was that Brian Epstein would get a phone call from an American promoter and say, well, now the Beatles, can we tempt you back, Brian, with about $10 billion to appear next week? And I'm thinking, oh my God, if he ever that happens, there's Paul McCartney with no hair. So that's going to look good.
Well,
6 weeks later, in
yeah.
the newspaper, there's a big article. It says, Paul McCartney back from holiday with short hair. And at the airport, they all were taking photos. And someone said to Mal Evans, bless him, because he said, the article said, Paul McCartney back from safari from Kenya, Nairobi, in disguise with short hair, with his girlfriend Jane Asher and Mal Evans. And when they got back to the airport, someone shouted out, Paul, who cut your hair? Who cut your hair? And Mal Evans said, oh, his hairdresser, Leslie Cavendish.